Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout would not take the garbage out. She'd scour the pots and scrape the pans, candy the yams and spice the hams. And though her daddy would scream and shout, she simply would not take the garbage out. And so it piled up to the ceiling. Coffee grounds, potato peelings, brown bananas, rotten peas, chunks of sour cottage cheese. It filled the can, it covered the floor, it cracked the window, it blocked the door with bacon rinds and chicken bones, drippy ends of ice cream cones, prune pits, peach pits, and orange peels, gloppy glumps of cold oatmeal, pizza crusts and withered greens, soggy beans and tangerines, crusts of black burnt buttered toast, grisly bits of beefy roast. The garbage rolled on down the hall, it raised the roof, it broke the wall with greasy napkins and cookie crumbs, globs of gooey bubble gum, cellophane from green bologna, rubbery, blubbery macaroni, peanut butter caked and dry, curdled milk and crusts of pie, moldy melons, dried up mustard, eggshells mixed with lemon custard, cold French fries and rancid meat, yellow lumps of cream of wheat. At last, the garbage reached so high that finally it touched the sky. And all of her neighbors moved away, and none of her friends would come to play. And finally, Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout said, all right, okay already, I'll take the garbage out. But then, of course, it was too late because the garbage reached across the state from New York to the Golden Gate. And there in the garbage, she did hate. Poor Sarah met an awful fate that I cannot right now relate because the hour is much too late. But always remember Sarah Stout, and always I have one question for you. What was Sarah's problem as it relates to sustainability? Lazy? Okay, lazy how? Yeah, I mean, what does that have to do with sustainability? It's a bunch of lazy people. What does that got to do with sustainability? Okay, but that's what her problem was? Okay, what did she not want to do? Okay, and how does not taking the garbage out affect sustainability? You can't say anything. You can she said you can't recycle, you can't reuse, and reduce anything. You gonna say that? Thank you. Great minds think alike. What else? How does this story even have anything to do with sustainability? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. She did not care, at least up front, how her actions were having an impact on first her, then her household, then her family, then it went across the nation. Sound familiar? Anything else? Any other similarities? Yes, sir. She took all the benefits. I didn't hear the other part. She took all the benefits. What were the benefits? The food. So she didn't have a problem eating. What else does she not have a problem doing? As I said at the beginning, what she would do. She washed the dishes, she scoured the pots and scraped the pans. She candied the yams and spiced the hams. But no matter what her daddy said, she still wouldn't take the garbage. That actually sounds like my nephew who lived with me. And I don't want to knock him upside the head sometimes for not wanting to do that. But, you know, this is, who knows who that's written by, that poem is written by? No one? Okay, that's a Shel Silverstein poem. Okay, Where the Sidewalk Ends. You'll find it around page 69, 70-ish, okay? I like to quote that, not to show how much I know, because I really am not that smart, but I like to quote it because it's applicable in a whole lot of different areas. And so today, I want to talk a little bit with you and to you, but learn from you as well as you learn from me about sustainability as it relates to buildings and some other aspects, okay? So let me get the formalities out of the way. I work for the Rutland Institute for Ethics, and if you were to consider what the Rutland Institute for Ethics is really all about, what I tell people is this: we are not in the business of making people ethical. I hope your mama and your daddy did that before you got here, okay? I cannot make you ethical. However, what I can do is, number one, help you understand what an ethical dilemma is. Because an ethical dilemma is not always what people think it is. Sometimes people think hard choices are ethical dilemmas. That's not an ethical dilemma. One of the things that I like to share with students when I go in the classroom, and one of them they accept kind of, sort of, the other one they absolutely do not agree with me on, but that's okay, because sometimes when you stand for the truth, you have to stand alone, but I have to do it anyway. Here's example number one. Example number one, you go to Walmart, you do a month's worth of grocery shopping. You get to the water aisle, you get a case of water, you cannot fit it in the basket, you slide it under, you pay for your groceries, but you honestly forget that that's under there. You get out to the car, you unload your groceries. Oh my God, I'm looking down. Oh my God, I didn't pay for the water. That is not an ethical dilemma. There's a clear right and a clear wrong. The clear right is to take it back in and pay for it. I don't care how lazy you are, and I don't care how you feel about it. There's a clear right and a clear wrong. That's the example that most students can kind of get with. But let me give you this one, because I'm going to lose some of y'all on this one. The second one is, you and your roommate have the exact same professor, exact same time, exact same days, but different times. So you're back, you have an 8 o'clock, your roommate has a 9:30. You get to class, your professor says, pop quiz. You take the quiz. You leave class. What is your roommate, as he's walking in or she's walking in, what are they going to ask you? What did you do in class? For you to tell them and give them an advantage. I know you mean mugging me, but I'm going to say it anyway. There is a clear right and a clear wrong. Clearly, you should not give them an advantage that nobody else has and tell them that you're going to have a pop quiz prepared. That includes you getting on your phone and texting them and tell them, get up and start studying because this is what's on it. Clearly, that is wrong. Ethical dilemmas lie in gray areas. What I call your kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't situations, okay? What we are here for as an institute is to, number one, help you understand what an ethical dilemma is, and to help you understand that you will face them, because you face them every day. Many times you just don't know it. But number two, the other role that we serve is to help you, give you a methodical way to think through an ethical dilemma, so that when you truly come up with this dilemma and you don't know which way to go, you have a methodical way to think through it and come to a solution. That is, in essence, what we do. How do we do it? We have an advisory board. We have a faculty, and the reason I have that, if you think about a chair with 4 legs, the back in the seat would be the Rutland Institute for Ethics, but it's supported by 4 legs. Our advisory board, our faculty group, our student group, and then of course our staff. So why is the Institute important? Now I'm just gonna be honest with you. Are you recording this? Okay, well, I may have to come back later and apologize for this. I don't know what we were smoking when we put together such a long mission statement. But clearly, in the midst of this mission statement, here's where we are. Good decision-making and healthy and ethical lifestyles. That is what justifies the existence of the Rutland Institute for Ethics. Okay? So how do we do what we do? Of course, I'm doing one now, classroom presentations. We also go into the community and we help the community understand some of these basic truths. We also have partnerships with Rotary, and we have a Rutland Fellow. Right now, I will say our Rutland Fellow is the former retired now director of the Office of Ethics for the United Nations, Joan Dubinsky. But I'm really excited. Her term ends in June of next year. And I'm super excited to announce officially, you're the first out loud people that I've said this to in a group, okay? I'm super excited that next year, for 1 year, our Rutland Fellow will be the former US Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, who served under Surgeon General under President Trump. And he's already locked in. He will be on campus twice next academic year. So we're super pumped about that, okay? So we have a fellow, we have publications, and then we have things like our high school ethics case competition, where we bring high schoolers in, Distinguished Ethics Scholars Program, which is a program that if you participate in co-curricular activities with us at a certain level, you can, at one level, you can graduate with a cord, and at a greater level, you can graduate with a medallion. And that would be because of fulfillment of our standards. We have Annual Ethics Day, which is coming up next month. We have Dr. Lyric Jorgensen, Acting Associate Director of Science Policy for NIH. That's who's coming in to be our Annual Ethics Day speaker. I would encourage you to be here. It will be here in this location. Then we have our Tide Conference, and we have several awards that we give. In particular, I will note the J.T. Barton Award. That's for students or student organizations that somewhere in their programming, they promote ethical leadership or ethical decision-making. If they just embed it in their programming, they can have an opportunity to win one of 3 prizes, $1,500, $1,000, or $500 for that student or student organization. And then we have our Cherry Broswell Rutland Award. So let's talk a little bit about the meat and crux of this. So building sustainability issues, and I'm preaching to the choir, so I'm gonna need you to help me as someone who did not study in this field. When we talk about structural resilience, give me an example of something that has happened somewhat recently where structural resilience was compromised. Yes, sir. Yes, the hotel in Florida that, well, wasn't a hotel, condominium. I'm glad you brought that up because you're going to see a little bit of that in just a second. Any other examples? Do you know what happened with the condo? Who knows what happened kind of with that condo? Tell me what you know. Okay. Did you hear the same thing?
I just know that like some based on like structure over time, something where they added an add-on to it that didn't exactly like it wasn't structurally sound to add the add-on, which is what made it too heavy, which is what fell.
Okay. Okay. Yes, sir. found a crack in the foundation that got bigger over time. Okay, okay, very good, very good. I want you to keep all this in mind because when we get toward the end of this presentation, some of this you're gonna see it again. What about hazard mitigation? What do we mean by hazard mitigation? Yes, ma'am.
Like the way you clean up oil.
Absolutely. Oil spills, explosions, but also how do we get rid of toxic waste or things that are just waste? You know, that's why we have the barrels there. Sometimes what's in the barrels, obviously, if it's in the barrel, it's probably something that should not be seeping out into water supply or any other life supply. It should be contained, okay? So hazard mitigation, climate adaptation. Talk to me, young lady. What do I mean by, climate, why, I mean, this is kind of giving you a good picture of it, but why is this important? Okay, so give me a climate disaster that would affect animals. Okay, hurricane would be one. What's one that we might have, and actually we have some say so over that too, but what's one that happened recently that affected the Midwest that actually still affecting them? Didn't even happen in this country, it happened in Canada. Wildfires. So when I go back home, because I'm from Illinois, when I go back home and I'm talking to some of my friends and relatives, they're saying, we're yet feeling the effects of wildfires in the Midwest. Our breathing, someone like me who's an asthmatic, and I've been an asthmatic all my life, I'm sensitive to those things. So it makes a difference. And even with the picture that we have, talk to me a little bit about that picture and why that's a big deal. It's just a piece of ice. The sea levels rise. Absolutely, absolutely. So maybe it's important for us to think about what we're doing now that will have an impact later. And then environmental equity. Now, I included this one intentionally. Sir, talk to me a little bit about what you think environmental equity is. Okay, he said it's equity of the environment. Somebody help him. You're right. I'm gonna give you that. But I need a little bit more than that. Talk to me, son. I like those glasses. If they come up missing, you'll know where to find them.
More than giving everyone equal, instead of everyone having an equal environmental equity, you give the less fortunate more to balance them out, kind of like in the picture.
Well, kind of, sort of, but why is equity so important environmentally? Yeah, give me an example of where they need a fair shot. Man, go back to sleep. Give me an example of where, again, equality says we give everybody the same thing. Equity says we give you what you need to be equal, or give you at least the best we can to make all circumstances equal. So if we're giving everyone the best we can to make it as equal as possible so that everyone has a fighting chance, where does that matter environmentally? Why does it matter environmentally? Yes, sir. Okay. Why would that be important for equality? Equity, excuse me.
Because there are some
that use more water than others. So, and there's only a limited amount of water in the lake that they have to manage.
So how would you suggest that we have to look at it to make it equitable? Okay, and then what? They all get water? Okay, well, I'm gonna, before I say it, come on. Actually, you're making an extremely good point. So let's go with this. Let me say it like this. How many of you, and I want you to stand, how many of you at home, wherever home is, live within 5 miles of a grocery store? Stand. Okay, you can, that's most of the room. You can take a seat. What happens if in my neighborhood there is no grocery store? And the only way I can get to a grocery store is by going at least 10 miles or more. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the point she was making, for those of you that didn't hear, is that if you have to travel further, there are a couple things. Number one, you have to travel further, which means that you're exuding more pollution into the air. If you have to travel farther, then that means that many times you may or may not be able to afford healthier food. Let's not even talk about whether you even know how to cook. Now, some of you are laughing, but it's true, because if you haven't been taught how to cook, then McDonald's and Burger King becomes your meals of choice. And the dollar menu is what you would get, right? If you really can't afford too much. What does that do to a waistline? What does that do to health? Okay. So am I going to put a Whole Foods in the projects area? Why not? Or Trader Joe's? But that's healthier food. But it costs more. So then, so you're thinking, think about it in those ways of the effect of lack of equity in the environment that affects people and how it affects from people to the environment. It's a cascading effect, okay? So we're looking at the ecological system, the social system, the economic system. All of these have an impact. When we look at, because I was talking to one of the speakers that you're going to have in a couple of weeks, and we were talking about what actually exists in a code of ethics. Now, these two, you pretty much know. No cheating, cannot take credit for someone else's work. However, she and I were talking about equitable profession. And she was saying how in the profession of architecture professionals, there's a lack of color. Has been for a long time. Why is that important? Should we even pay attention? Or maybe they just weren't smart enough to get in the school. What's going on? Speak to me back there. I think your shirt says Arendelle. All right, Arendelle, speak to me. Why is it important that we think about diversity? Now, this talks about color, but diversity in more general terms when it comes to even like architecture and the field of architecture. Okay, stop right there, because that's a really good point. The types of building you're making, where does it come into effect when you're thinking about diversity? What's an obvious one? If one of your diversity topics or persons are dealing with, say, differently abled. Yes. So is the building accessible? How accessible is it? Okay, very good point. But what about race and ethnicity? How in the world is that important? Shouldn't everybody like the same thing? Yes, ma'am. In particular, where it's put, in particular, if it's put on sacred land or land that is considered sacred. Also, the structure of the building and whether or not it's habitable to the group of people that you're trying to get there. So it's really nice sometimes to have a very flashy building, but if that building is out of place where it is, then you have to think twice about whether or not that's the right building to build. Now, for me, let me just tell you about me, because I'm not ashamed. I used to be ashamed, but I'm not ashamed at this age, at 55, to tell people where I came from. So I've lived in the projects before. I know what it's like. I know what the structures are like. And I know how embarrassed I was coming from a lower economic social background of how embarrassed I was sometimes because of the way those buildings were structured, which were big apartment buildings, but they looked like poor people lived in them. And how much of a difference it made when we just moved out of the projects into what we considered a normal looking apartment. Or how much of a difference it made when we left the apartment and moved to a real house. You see, you see me where I am now, but this is not where I've always been. Matter of fact, I will tell you this, I'm the first one in my family to ever own a home. My mother never owned a home, and I come from a single parent home. Never owned a home, we always rented. The first one, my two sisters who are twins, 6 years younger than me, to this day in Vegas, they do not own a home. First one in the family. So it makes a difference to me how things are and where they are, okay? And for me, because I'm a person of color, I mean, you can't miss me. I'm a big black man, okay? And I'm proud to be who I am. But the one thing that I found interesting was silence is deafening on the issues of color where it comes to the profession of architecture. So we want those voices because diversity brings about not only diversity in the workplace, but it gives you diversity of ideas. So I'm going to take just a little bit of time here to talk a little bit about the STAR decision-making model. All of you should have this. So this is our methodical way of helping you to think through a dilemma, okay? You're going to recognize the ethical problem, then you're going to identify the stakeholders, and then you're going to try and come up with 3 solutions to the problem. Then the T, you're going to use the tests, which are on the other side. Then for the A, you're going to act because you have to make a decision, and then you're going to act. And it's important that you reflect, because if you have to make a difference, if you have to go through that choice again or go through that issue again, and you have to make some adjustments, you'll know how to do it. Now, let me give you a quick example in a real life example, and then I'm going to come back to building and sustainability. So here I am. I wasn't Dr. McCoy then, I was Mr. McCoy. I was substitute teacher at a middle school. I caught a boy cheating, 8th grade. He begged me not to turn him in. I did anyway. For whatever reason, he decided that he kind of took a liking to me, respected me. And he began to, as time went on, got into high school, but he began to call me and Dr. McCoy. Now, he did have anger issues, I'll tell you that. That was one of his issues. So Mr. McCoy, is it okay if I come and spend some time with you? He did not have a father at home. So of course, me being who I am, I knew I couldn't just pick him up. So I had to go and meet mom. So I met mom. Mom was okay. She understood his issue. And she would let me, sometimes we go down to the park and just talk. Sometimes he'd come back to my place, my apartment at that time, and I would teach him how to cook. We would watch TV, watch movies, and I'd take him back home, always with mom's approval, okay? Because I'm not a pedophile. And I would only do it when he requested to come, which was usually when he was having an episode of anger. So a couple of years go by. We formed a really good bond. We're cool with each other, but he gets a little older. I don't hear from him for a while. Then one night, he's 18. One night at about 1 a.m, I receive a call. Mr. McCoy, me and my friend just got kicked out of the house, and we don't have any place to go. We wondered if we could come to your house and crash until we can get things sorted out at home. So at first I said, yes, you can come. I said, but wait a minute, who is this boy you bringing with you? He said, oh, that's my friend. I said, how old is your friend? He said, 16. I said, hold up. Before you come, let me make a call. I'll call you right back. So I put the phone down, picked it back up, and I called the police. I didn't call the police on him. I just called the police and say, look, this is the situation that I'm facing right now. What do you advise me to do? Because I'm not trying to go to jail for nobody. And the police told me under no circumstances are you to let that 16-year-old in your house without parental consent. So I said, okay, I understand that. So I put the phone down, picked it back up, called him back. I said, you can come, but you're going to have to take your friend somewhere else. He cannot come to my house. Okay, about an hour later, knock on the door. I had the couch all ready for him. He comes in, crashes on the couch. I go back to my bedroom. I get up early in the morning. I come in the living room. I'm like, okay, let's talk. What's going on? Okay. Now, if we were to recognize the ethical problem, where is the ethical problem in here? Talk to me, son. Okay, just in this whole situation as I've given it though. So the big ethical problem in this is what? Yeah, the 16-year-old. Because he's been to my house. Plus he's 18, so he's of age. He can come. The 16-year-old is an issue. Now there are underlying issues, and that's where we start talking about many of the problems. So you're right. What did he get kicked out for? Or what did they get kicked out for? So on and so forth. Okay? You identify the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders in the story that I just told? I am. Who else? The boys, yes. Parents, absolutely. Who else? The law, because I am involved in it. Absolutely. Okay. So you want to think through the stakeholders and then develop at least 3 solutions. So give me 3 just random solutions. Talk to me, son. Okay, so do what I did. One can stay, one cannot. Come on, talk to me. Okay, neither one of them can stay. All right? Yes, sir. You want to say one? That was what you were going to say? Great minds think alike. Come on. Okay. So I could have called mom to figure out what was going on. All right. So what we encourage people to do is come up with as many solutions as you can, possible solutions. All right. And then what you're going to do is run those solutions. I'm going to try this, Helen. All right. So we can do what you did. We can not let in. And what was the third one? Talk to mom. All right. All right. So we're doing this. Let me see here. Young lady who's trying to duck and dodge from me right there. Right there. Right there. You looking dead at me. Right there. Yep. Right there. Yeah, right there. Give me a test. Any test. Look on the card. I need a test. Pardon? Okay, read. What does harm test say?
Option do less harm than the alternatives?
All right, does this option do less harm than the alternatives? If I were to do what I did, does it do less harm? Sorry. Would I be able to, does doing what I did do less harm than the other alternatives that I have up there? Yes or no? Yes, sir. Yes, less harm than not letting them in, less harm than the mom, calling mom. Pardon? For me. No. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, so this is probably, sorry, this is probably, is that me doing this? Okay, this is confusing me. Tullen, are you back there? Because I don't know what I'm doing. Thank you. So what we would do is, if it does less harm, we would check it, okay? To not let them in, we can kind of go down the line. If it does not letting them in do more harm than the other two? No, probably not. So we're probably good there. Talking to mom, is that probably going to be not harmful? Absolutely. Okay. Sir, give me another test. Legality. Okay. So is it legal for me to do what I did? Yes. Is it legal for me not to let them in? Yes. Is it legal for me or any legal issues if I call mom and talk to mom? No legal issues. Okay. Are you getting kind of the picture of how we would methodically walk through these? Yes. Are there any questions? Because I'm getting ready to really put you to work now. All right. I think I got to go here. All right. This is why I liked your example earlier. Sir, read the first paragraph for me. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Go ahead, read loud. All right, thank you for reading. I think, let me do it so people can hear it as well. When Chris bought her unit 10 years ago, the neighborhood was very nice and most of the units were occupied by owners. The association fees were low as maintenance was not costly. Since that time, the association has changed. More and more owners have begun renting the units out and moving elsewhere. The renters have not always been monitored as closely as they should, which means the buildings are not as clean and safe as they used to be. Police have been called numerous times on unwelcomed guests, violation of noise ordinances, and suspected drug activities. Association fees have been increased several times over the past 10 years from $90 per month, and now they're at $190 per month. And every time the fees increase, owners complain and more of them move out in favor of renters. Several times, Chris has called association meetings to discuss the increasing cost of building maintenance, but she cannot gather enough of the owners to meet quorum, a necessity in empowering the association to change some rules according to the original bylaws of the association charter. Last week, Chris received a letter from the city indicating that since minor earthquakes are becoming more frequent in the area, all buildings will have to strengthen their structures within 1 year to help decrease the chance an earthquake will easily decimate any building in the area. With a couple of quick calls to suggested contractors, Chris is told that each building will cost no less than $120,000 to bring up to code. Chris wonders, how can I ask the owners for an additional $10,000 when they all have issues getting $190 per month to the association? As a matter of fact, routinely, only 50% of the monthly dues come in on time and without involving legal representation. The more money the association uses to go after deadbeat owners, the less money they have to do necessary repairs and maintenance in the buildings. That is why the building walls and carpet, well, should have said, the building walls are filthy and the carpet is filthy. Lighting is less than ideal. Garbage receptacles are smelly and untidy, and the buildings have a very rundown look. Chris is at her wit's end. She obviously has to deal with the most pressing issue first. But how? Help me walk through this. What's the first thing we got to do, son? What's the first thing we got to do? Stop. And when we stop, what do? Recognize the ethical problem. What is the ethical problem? Describe the problem to me. The building might collapse. She'll have a year to figure it out. You all are talking, but I can't really hear you. Money. What about money? Okay. So if there are 30, basically there are, it's going to cost every person $10,000 if they separate it by units, roughly. And what's already happening that we know of? Okay, so obviously they're having some difficulty paying the $190 a month. How many of you live or lived in a condominium? This is interesting. So some of you don't know the rules that go along with living in a condo. So just so you know, when you move into a condominium, you have to pay monthly dues for most of them. And those monthly dues can be super cheap to very expensive. And all of that's for your maintenance. So you don't have to go out and cut the grass, so you don't have to trim the bushes. If they have a pool on site, they will take care of the pool. That's what your money does. Okay? So our issue is we're broke as an association. And the people don't have money, or at least they act like they don't have any. Okay? Who are the stakeholders? All the tenants, all the owners, I should say owners, not tenants, but all the owners. By the way, what is another problem that we didn't talk about that deals with the rundown part? Pardon? Yeah, but how do you do it when you don't have any money? Who is she? What is she going to work doing? Okay, let me help you out. Associations usually have a board. Usually a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer. Usually, who collect the money and take care of all the business. Okay? Now, if more owners are moving out and they're renting more to people coming in, and we already know what about the renters? Not all of them, but many of them. They don't respect the property. Because if they respected the property, then you wouldn't have dirty walls, dirty carpet, rundown look. Okay? And the reason that our buildings don't look as good is because we're not collecting enough money, because people are not sending it in. And when they do send it in, those who don't send it in, we have to do what? Well, we got to do a little more than heckle. We're going to stand out there doing, where your money? We need money. We got to do what? Hire lawyers. Do lawyers come cheap? So do you see the vicious cycle? That the more money we use for lawyers, the more it depletes our resources, and the more our resources are depleted, the less we can do in the buildings. Who else is stakeholders? The city, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's develop 3 possible solutions. Talk to me, son, right there. Actually, I was talking to the one in front of you. He's ducking and dodging right there. I need you to know, because you've been sitting here for 35, 40 minutes. I need you to know. Give me a solution, some way to solve this issue. Yes, it is. How do I do what I need to do with them to solve this issue? Okay, well, okay, so that is a legitimate way, but understanding that every time I go to them legally, I got to go in my pocket and pull out money. And that money doesn't come out of Chris's pocket. Where does it come from? The association. Okay, so I can legally go after them. That's a legitimate way. Talk to me. Give me another way to deal with this. We can go after them legally. I didn't hear a word you just said. Implementing consequences. Like what, other than what we're already doing? If they're not giving their money? Now, some of you may not know this, so let me teach it to you. Every association has bylaws. And those are the laws that you're supposed to govern yourself by, to live in there. And if those bylaws say you have to have, let's say, 50% of your owners present for a vote before that vote can actually be taken, if you get less than 50%, your vote doesn't mean too much. If the laws in your own bylaws say you have to have this number, then you have to have the number. Or what do you have to do to get that changed? Change the bylaws. That's not easy either, but that's a whole nother discussion. Okay? So your suggestion was maybe change the bylaws. So we have two, or change the rules. So we have changed the rules, and we have go after them legally. Yes, ma'am. Child, the city ain't gonna come up off no money. Now, I'm just telling you, they just not gonna do it because it's not their property. They got their own worries. Yes, sir. Okay, so you can just let it play out. For safety reasons, we didn't make the money, so everybody has to leave. Come on, sir. I'm gonna come back. Sell the building. Okay. Interesting. So we got 4 good solutions. So what you would do, possible solutions, you will put those through the lens of the tests, each of the tests. And then you would make a decision. I'm kind of quickening this so we can be done on time. Then you would act, and then you would reflect. And then if you need to make that decision again, you come back around to it. Now, why is this important? Let me just tell you, where did I get this from? Guess who used to be Chris? Now, we didn't really face, building code of that nature, but we did face building code issues. And it was a vicious cycle of trying to get money out of people. The reason I'm so glad you brought that example up about Miami and the condo association is because that resonated with me. Because I understood as soon as I heard what happened, that they had been told that there needed to be some structural things to build up the integrity of the building. Many of the owners began to complain because that would mean, in order to make those changes, that would mean they'd have to pay more money. And they didn't want to pay more money, so they balked, and many of them didn't do it. So many of the repairs never got done. And that resonated with me because I know how hard it is to pull money out of people who act like they broke. And maybe they are. But that doesn't stop what needs to happen on a sustainability level. These are the decisions that you will have to make as you venture out into the world. Some of you may have a supervisor who tells you, we can cut corners here and there. That's not what you want as you're designing a building. You want the best materials that you know are going to make the structure more solid. But if the boss is breathing down your neck saying you need to cut 20 or 30 or $40,000 off this somehow, some way. I don't care how you do it, just do it. Because they're not going to pay that much. Then you have to make a decision. What will you sacrifice? And is it worth you sacrificing if you know what your standard is? Okay? That's why this is so important. Are there any questions? The last thing I want to tell you is this. I want to go back to what I said when I first started. It is Clemson that inserts in their mission statement that our students will have integrity, we will give service, we will be inclusive, and we will develop relationships that are lasting and positive. It is up to you whether or not you want to be that person. So lastly, I want you to know, I put the QR code up there for you. That will lead you to all of the activities that we have for our institute. And I invite you, we need some students for our student group. I would invite you to seriously consider becoming a part of our student group. And any questions that you have, please feel free to contact me. Okay? Thank you so much for your time.